Guys, today we're going to start exploring exponential functions. This is a very important topic that we see multiple times in math. So I recommend you write down the notes and pause the video, rewind the video whenever you don't understand something, and try to pause the video as I ask questions and answer the questions and then see the answers. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Exploring exponential functions. What is an exponential function? That's the main idea here, to kind of have an idea of how it works. So we're going to start with a couple examples to keep it very, very simple. Example number one. This kind of has to do with the activity with the rice and the cream that we did the previous day. So you have 1 grain of rice, and we are going to double it. So let's think about what is happening here. Let's try doubling it 4 times. So if we have 1 grain of rice, and if we want to double it, what does doubling mean? Doubling means to multiply by 2. Multiply by 2. So that means that I'm going to have 1 and I'm going to multiply it by 2 to double 1. But I want to multiply it by 2 4 times. So we're going to do 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 because I want to double it 4 times. What's another way I could write this? I could do this 1 times 2. How many times did I multiply 2? 4 times. So that would be 1 times 2 to the 4th. Okay? Now, let's look at another example. What if I want to double it 6 times? How many times am I going to multiply by 2? I'm going to multiply it 6 times. So I'm going to do 1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Because I want to double it 6 times. So I'm going to have 1 times 2 to the 6th. Because I would want to double it 6 times. Now, let's look at C. Double it X number of times. Here's the tricky part. So I got 1 and I'm going to multiply it by 2. And this time I want to multiply it X number of times. So what power is 2 going to be to? It's going to be to the X power, like that. So if I were to write this as an equation, it would be y equals 1 times 2 to the X, like that. Now let's go ahead and try another example. Make sure that you're writing this down nice and neatly in your notes. Let's try this one. Number 2. You have the number 8 and you want to double it. So for example 8, we're going to double it 3 times. So I'm going to have 8, and if I want to double it, I'm going to multiply it by 8 or multiply by 2. Well, doubling means to multiply by 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2. Double it once, double it twice, and then double it a 3rd time. So how would I write 8 doubled 3 times? 8 times 2 to the 3rd, because the only one that you're doubling is the 2. The 2 is what's happening multiple times. Go ahead and try the next one. Pause the video. Doubling it 6 times. So you're going to take 8, and how many times are you going to times it by 2 to double it 6 times? Try it, pause the video, and then continue watching the video. Alright, so I'm assuming that you did that already. So we have 8, and then we're going to double it 6 times. So that means I'm going to multiply by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8 to the power 8 times 2. How many times do we have 2 to the power 6? Now, one thing that I would like to mention about this, and this is where we kind of have to get the idea of exponential functions, is that when I type this into the calculator, if I were to type this into the calculator, let's see, 8 times 2 to the power of 6, watch what happens. My number is huge. It's 512. Now, let's assume the pattern continues. 8 times 2 to the power of 7. Look at the number. It went from 500 to 1,000. Now let's do it again. 8 times 2 to the 8th. It went to 2,000. 8 times... Let's skip a few. Let's go to the power of, let's say, 12. How much do you think this number is going to grow? The number grew to 32,000. Look at that. This is an exponential function. It is growing very, very rapidly. So, let's go ahead and finish our problem here. It says doubling it x number of times. So again, we have y, we have 8, and we're going to multiply by 2, x number of times. So that's going to be 8 times 2 to the x. So our equation looks like y equals 8 times 2 to the x, like that. So let's go ahead and look at another example. Number 3. I want you to write this one down, and I want you to attempt this one. Notice that this one changes just a little, so make sure you read it carefully. You have 5 and you want to triple it. Triple it 2 times. How would you triple something? So take a minute, pause the video, copy this down, and then follow along. Alright, so I'm hoping you paused the video already, and we're going to get started. So you have 5, and you want to triple it. What is tripling mean? What does that mean? Does it multiply by 2? No, not 2. It multiplies by 3. How many times do you want to triple it? You want to triple it 2 times, so I'm going to have 5 times 3 times 3. If I wanted to rewrite this, I could write it as 5 times 3. And how many times did I multiply it? 2 times. And that gives me the answer. Again, I'm not worried about what the number is. I'm worried about kind of understanding the pattern. How do we get the pattern here? Let's try the next one. We have 5, and we want to triple it 5 times. So we start with 5. I'm going to triple it 5 times. So that's 1 time, 2, like that. And that's how you would do 5 tripled 5 times. So I'm going to write it like this. 5 times, how many times did we have that? 3? 3 to the 5th power. And then that gives us some large number. Now let's try the equation. So again, we started with 5. We're going to triple it. Here we don't know how many times, so it's 3 to the x. So our equation is y equals 5 times 3 to the x. There we go. Let's go ahead and try the last example. Again, make sure you're writing this down. This one is slightly different because it's not growing. So for this one, we have 100,000. We want to get rid of 1/2 of it each time. So this time we're cutting it in half. So let's think about this. We have 100,000. And how do we cut it in half? Do we subtract 50,000 or do we multiply by a number? Or divide? Cutting it in half is dividing by 2. But for some reason in these exponential functions, we don't really use division, we use multiplication. Dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So what are we doing each time? We're multiplying by 1/2 times 1/2. Now, I want to cut it in half 3 times. So I want to cut it by 1/2 3 times. So I'm going to write it like this. And so if I were to try to write this as an expression, I'm going to do 100,000 times 1/2. And to what power do I raise this? To the 3rd power. Let's talk about B. Cut in half 5 times. So again, we're starting with 100,000. Notice that I always put the start first. That's very important. And this time I'm multiplying it by 1/2 because I'm cutting it down by half, and I'm doing that 5 times like that. So that would give me the number. Now let's try the last one. C. Cut in half x number of times. Again, we start with 100,000. And then 1/2. And now x number of times, because we're going to multiply it how many times it wants us to cut it in half. So that would be our equation right there. Y equals 100,000 times 1/2 to the x. these exponential functions are very important to learn. We're going to look into them some more later on. So I want you to try these following examples now. So as part of your notes, put these below it and make sure to answer them. Example number 4, write the equation for when you start with 3 and you double it x number of times. Example number 5, write the equation for when you start with 7 and you triple it x number of times. Again, remember what the word triple means. What are we multiplying by here? Example number 6, write the equations for when you start with 12 and you quadruple it. So what does quadruple mean? So make sure that you write these down, get all the notes, and let me know if you have any questions, guys. Have a great day.